What up, YouTube? It's your boy Jared Gore, both sides of the fence. I haven't made a regular video in a while. I've been doing a lot of shorts here and haven't made a video in a long time, referring to when I was either locked up or when I worked at the prison at Mount Olive Correctional Complex, the maximum security prison, one of the most dangerous, if not the dangerous, in West Virginia. But they got some real major, big, heavyweight killers in there. Some of them was from Moundsville. A lot of them's dying off now, but some of them was from the notorious Moundsville. I know a lot of people have heard of Moundsville when it was shut down and they built Mount Olive because of a court ruling. Said Moundsville was too cruel. It was cruel and unusual punishment. The cells was real small. They had rats in the cells, cockroaches, people getting murdered daily because of the type of environment they was living in. It's like a cage animal. If you don't feed a dog, if you treat an animal like shit, if you barely feed them, a dog's gonna eventually try to attack other dogs to get what they gotta get. And they're gonna try to do what they gotta do to try to survive, just like any other animal. Survival of the fittest. Same thing with humans. Well, a lot of your Mansville old head inmates, the real convicts from back in the day, there's some of them still at Mount Olive. A lot of them is dying off, but you still got a few, because prison is a preserver. A lot of people, when they go to prison, they get clean and they wasn't doing the stuff what they was doing when they was younger, so they get a life sentence at 16 years old, 18 years old. They end up preserving their bodies, living 80 years, 70, 80, 90 years old, or they would have been dead if they was on the street at 25, 30 years old back, same as it is now. Prison preserves a lot of people that's out there doing robberies, getting on drugs, killing people and stuff. It's the same as it was like back in the day. The prisons are getting more populated in West Virginia now. Well, good thing about Mount Olive, you got a lot of lifers there and they get single cells, so that's a good thing. And if you was known to be a predator, preying on other people, they'll put you in a single cell, whatever. But like I said, I hadn't made a video in a while, so I want to tell you about a story that I heard, and it has to deal with one of the inmates from Moundsville. I'm going to say his first name, but I'm going to give you his last initial. But he wasn't originally from West Virginia. I think he was from Ohio. His first name was Mikey. His last name starts with an E. That's all I'm going to tell you about it. But anyways, Mikey, he still looks pretty young. I think he's close to 50 now, probably. But when I was there, he still looked like he was in his young 30s. He was, and I was 20-some, early 30s at the time. But he looks pretty young. Well, Mikey was young when he was at Moundsville, and I heard the story on Mikey that he was, I guess, into drug running and gun running, and he had gotten in trouble in Ohio, and supposedly he was messing with an undercover agent in Ohio. They had a case on him, and he ended up finding out that the woman was undercover. Supposedly, he was messing with her and having sex, and ended up killing her and stabbing her to death, is what I was told. I've talked to a few of the older correctional officers, and they told me that story, that like he pretty much rocked her to sleep and ended up like messing with her and like slit her throat from behind in one of those compromising positions. Well, fast forward, he supposedly had the death penalty, or was facing the death penalty, and he was going back, and he had back and forth to court on that, and he might have had to do fed time or something on that, or was going to have to be doing all his time in Ohio. So he wanted to stay in West Virginia. So a lot of inmates, if they have it better in certain states, or they don't want to do their time in the feds or whatever, or they want to do fed time, they'll do certain crimes and get put in the feds, or like say for instance, some will send a threatening message to a federal judge or something. I seen one inmate do that, and so he ended up having to go do some time for threatening a judge in the feds, and after his sentence was over, or while his sentence was during the state time. But Mikey E was supposedly facing a life sentence in Ohio, or maybe the death penalty. I don't know exactly the whole situation, but I do know he supposedly killed the female undercover in a compromising position. Well, Mikey, like I said, was young when he was in there, and before they transferred or shut down Moundsville, supposedly he was in the lockup unit. I don't know if it was, I think it might have been Nortal, one of those lockup units. I'm not too familiar with Moundsville, but he was in the lockup unit with some major hitters in the West Virginia DOC, Bruce White, all these big name players back in the day, Franklin Brothers. A lot of people, if you're familiar with the West Virginia DOC, these names I'm saying, people, they're big major hitters. Red Snyder, he was killed up there at Moundsville. He was a leader of a gang, and supposedly his ghost still haunts Moundsville prison to this day. They have big stories on the Moundsville prison. They have ghosts. There was like 30-some people murdered during that prison, not counting the 50 people that the state of West Virginia put to death, but 30-some individuals was murdered. They had two or three major riots, 2 or 3 big prison escapes, where one time like 9 people escaped. They tunneled like coal miners under a wall, and then shot a off-duty cop, and then another time like a few more got out, like 3 or 4, but there were several prison breaks. Well, anyways, back to the Mikey E's story. He was facing that time in Ohio and didn't want to go back to Ohio, so he got this punk, and Mikey, supposedly he doesn't do any type of homosexual activities, but he got this punk, and he was talking to this punk and flirting with this punk because he was going to kill him so that he'd get a life sentence in West Virginia, so he wouldn't have to go to Ohio. So they say Mikey lured him into an area of the lockup recreation yard and had the guy down on his knees in a compromising position. Well, the dude, while he was down there, Mikey had 2 knives, and I think he might have taped them to his hands, or made it to where they couldn't like slip off, tied them to his hands, and they said he brutally attacked this punk. I think the punk's name was Quimby, but he brutally attacked him while the guy was trying to perform an act on him. And the reason why I wanted to tell y'all this story is because there's even though you never know, prison's dangerous, the guy got him in a position to where he was vulnerable, just like when the woman was vulnerable. He found out she snitched on him. The guy didn't do his homework. The punk didn't do his homework, and he was so worried about getting this gratitude or this pleasure that he was trying to do that he got put in a trap. The Mikey E guy lured him in, and it cost him his life. And they said when he got done with him, this dude was brutally stabbed. Like I said, you never know. You don't want to go to prison and be put in those situations. You might not make it out. I don't think that dude had a life sentence. I think he had a messed up charge, but Mikey E lured him in. And fast forward it back, Mikey did a lot of time in the hole, because when you murder an inmate, they put you in a hole. But West Virginia don't have the death sentence anymore since like the 50s or something, so you can't be put to death. So they'll lock you in a hole for a few years and then turn you back loose onto the main yard. So he laid down in a hole for about 4 or 5 years, and he was right back out in the yard. Fast forward, come to Mount Olive, and he was a bald-headed guy, shaved his head, probably 160 pounds, probably about 6'1", but he had this look in his eyes, and he was one of those dudes you don't want to mess with, you know what I mean? And he would straight up, you could look in his eye. He had a skull. It looked like some kind of Hell's Angel skull on the side of his head, but he had the look. There wasn't nothing there. He would stare you down, and you didn't want to make eye contact with this dude, because if he felt some type of way, he would just handle his business to you just like that, and go lay down in a hole, kill you, take your life, lay down in a hole for 3 or 4 years, and come right back out there. You ain't going home to your family ever again. So, with that being said, you guys need to think before you do stuff. Watch what you do, because you don't want to be in a situation where somebody that it's like natural to them to take a person's life, and they go lay down for a couple years and be right back out there on the main line, and now you're gone for the rest of your life, can't see your family ever again. Jerry Gore.